So the no, it's fine. I can see you. I can feel that we're close with the same country. That's awesome. You've got the slide you want to share, right? Right, maybe go over. We had like almost 180 people registered for the event. See how many get shown. It's like 20 in the room so far. That's just about it. Yeah. Oh, let's go. And how's the little baby? How's the little baby? How's it feel to be a grandfather? Stirring the pot. Awesome. Well, let's let me double here and then.
Alrighty. Hello, everybody. Give me a little wave if you can
Hello.
hear me okay on wherever you are in South Africa. Thanks. And if you're from the US as well, big hello to you. Thanks for joining us this evening, or if it's daytime for you over there, welcome. So, we are very excited to introduce somebody to you. Before I do that, I'm just calling you here from the head office. Got Francois, who's literally sitting next to me over here, giving a little bit of a wave there. I'm Dr. Durante, the CEO of Medwave. He's the COO of Medwave, and we have Andres also to my right over here. Here is also part of our team and leading the team there. So really wonderful to meet all of you and see your screens. If you have got video, please turn it on. We love to see you. We always love to meet people in person. So thank you again for taking your time to be on this call. All right. So without further ado, we have got a very, very special guest this evening, Colin Grange, all the way from the USA. We were lucky enough to steal him and bring him to South Africa. No, I'm kidding. He was already here on a research project, but we've got him here in SA, and you're really in for a treat tonight as we learn a little bit from Colin in terms of belly fat. He's a belly fat expert. He actually was a best-selling author on belly fat. Published a book on that, which was a fantastic piece of work. I actually have a copy of that, and it's fantastic. In addition to that, he's got his own hormone school. So, in terms of understanding the endocrinology and homeopathy, naturopath, I mean, there's so many things. It's hard to even know what Colin can't do. But he's seeing some incredible results, and he has actually got uniquely, all three of the Medwave systems in his practice in the US and seeing some great results. So we're excited to unpack this. I have not even heard the stories that Colin's going to share. So I am absolutely chomping at the bit to hear about these testimonials and some of the stories. Last I heard, there was some fantastic things happening with the light technology there in your office, Colin. So, but I'd like to hand over to you, Colin. Tell us a little bit more about yourself, and thanks so much for jumping on here.
Well, David, thank you for the invitation to be here. Hello, everyone. It's been a while since I've addressed a completely South African or mostly South African audience. So it's really good to be back in the country and talking to everyone. It's pretty exciting stuff. Yeah, I've been in the US for 10 years. Some of you may have remembered I used to be fertility guy in South Africa. Since I branched out there, I've written books, as David said, got online courses. We've got a hormone health school that teaches a lot of doctors online. I also have a clinic over there where we've got all three of the Medwave devices, the large beds and the two panels. And we've been getting great weight loss results, incredible results with that. So I'm not going to tell you about all the results. I'm going to explain to you a little bit about how and why it works first. And then I'll talk to you about, once you understand the mechanisms, you can understand how the results we're getting are coming about.
But
All I can say is,
Colin, let me jump in
yes.
here. Colin is being so humble. I do need to say something. I mean, he's helped probably over 5,000 women who failed IVF therapy, were referred to his practice. He's helped those women fall pregnant with incredible protocols and strategies and medicines and all kinds of things. He's being very, very, very humble. I just want to put it out there. Colin has done an incredible work for us in South Africa. He was featured on Carte Blanche and all kinds of things, and for his amazing work. And so, yeah, honestly, Colin, you're not doing yourself a good job there. This man is amazing. So we're excited
Yeah, thank
to.
you.
But yeah, Colin, I'm excited because I mean, you started with Medwave about 2 years ago, didn't you?
Yeah, it's probably, I mean, yeah, when you brought the first ones to America, I was one of the first people to get the light panel, the 633. We've been using that ever since, getting incredible weight loss results. Because of all my fertility work, I had to learn to fix metabolic syndrome. And that's where I wrote the book on the cystic spiral. And I'm going to be talking about that tonight and how we break that spiral so people can lose weight. We've also got the incredible bed that we use. We've now got the contract to be the service provider for all the athletes, 400,000 athletes at UMaine
Wow.
University.
Wow.
So what they do is they can come in and they use the red light for rehab between games, and that helps with sports rehab and a lot of mental emotional stuff, just getting ahead in the game. And then, yeah, then we've got the new panel, which has got the 810 and the 635 in it. And yeah, that was one that we discussed many years ago about the neurological stuff, and that came about. And I've got some very exciting stories that we've seen. We've got it in the experimental phase in the practice where we've got about 30 or 40 patients just come in on a weekly basis just to experiment so that we can get case histories so we could start marketing it for those particular things. But I'll share that once we speak about the neurological stuff. But yeah, some really wonderful results all round. And yeah, when we understand the theory about why red light works, I've been using lasers in my practice since 2004. So same wavelengths, just different light source, which I'm going to describe tonight. And then, so I'm not new to it. And I've probably studied, or not probably, I have studied 2,700 research papers on photobiomodulation, red light therapy. So there's very little research out there that I haven't read about this. So it's helped me understand all the various ways we can use it and what it can do. And it's pretty incredible. And yeah, these are, yeah, for anyone who's new to these products, I want to just say from experience, having done this literally for probably 20 odd years, these are incredible tools. There's a lot of stuff out there that is red light, but it doesn't do what red light's supposed to do. And these ones are remarkable. And I'll also explain to you why they're remarkable and why I'm happy to do a talk like this. I'm not paid to endorse the product. Davide just likes me because of the fact that I've had great results with his product. So yeah, we'll talk about that too.
Colin, what's been unique seeing your journey, especially, is like how you've taken the vast amount of sort of physiological knowledge and physiology and basically then adapted and created protocols that are creating these incredible results inside of these patients' lives. And that to me is quite exciting, because I think there's so much more to experience. And this is not just a panel, it's not just a vibe plate. This is so much more once you really truly grasp the tool. And I think you helped us really in the beginning. So for a lot of people who may not know, but actually Colin was right at the beginning, helped us because we had a protocol that was sort of you got under the light and then you went on the vibration plate. And then Colin actually said, no, hang on. You need to add the vibration plate before you get under the light. And then that actually, we adapted our protocol for weight loss. And since then, it's been like absolutely amazing. The results we've had with weight loss. I mean, we just had Thomas, a guy here in South Africa, literally his doctor told him, you're going to die. And his boss said to him, I'm going to fire you next week if you don't change something. He literally lost 27 kilograms in 3 weeks using this technology. Literally unbelievable. And he made an incredible turnaround. He did follow your CISFIC diet, Colin, so absolutely got results because he combined it with that. So yeah, all kudos to you, and I'm excited to learn a bit more about the CISFIC process, and then also some of the results and the science behind this. So when you kick off and just the floor is all yours.
All right, let me share my screen and let's get this started.
So if anybody does have questions, feel free to put your questions in the chat. Francois will review those questions and then we'll introduce those questions towards the end. So please don't be shy. Put all your questions in the chat, and we would love to get to all of those questions for you tonight. So thanks, Colin.
Okay, so for those of you who are just joining, welcome. I'm going to shoot through a couple of overall benefits of what red light and narrow wave and why we call it narrow light versus just red. And then I'm going to get into a little bit more of the weight loss stuff. So forgive me if I seem like I'm going a bit quick in the beginning, but I want to also be respectful of everyone's time tonight. So basically, what is narrow light technology? So what you might have heard from David and his team is the fact that it's not just a red light. There's lights that can be red, and there's lights that give off a specific frequency and wavelength. And that's very important because what happens with all of the therapies is wavelengths are the vital measurement tool as to where you put the energy when you shine it on the body. So if we're going to go through particular wavelengths, shorter wavelengths there are, the shorter the little span of where you're going to put your energy, you're going to deposit photonic energy where the magic happens, basically right on the skin. If you've got a short wavelength, so something like ultraviolet or blue, they're going to hit the skin and dump all the energy straight away, which is why ultraviolet can burn, because of the fact that its photons can't pass through tissue very easily, and it's used for disinfection and it can burn our skin. However, with the spectrum increasing and we go towards the red and the infrared side of things, what we've got there is we've got a greater depth penetration because the wavelength's longer, and therefore the photons are deposited way further in. I know Davide's team has done paid for some research that was done to show with cadaver studies that the photons can get right through the skull, deep into the brain. And that's what we find with the what we call the neuro panel, which has got the 8 to 10 nanometers, so it's got the far infrared. So this is what we see in here with NLT. We've got a good focus of the beam. So it's a nice concentration and great penetration. It's also got a very low dispersion. So you're not getting as much bounce as you would with normal light. And then the second thing is that you've also got a bit of a larger area than laser. And that way you diffuse the photons. You're not focusing a beam too quick, too specifically on a point. And that's the only issue with laser, is that it was too focused. So you had to have either these showers or you had to have a scanner to be able to distribute that, where this does that automatically. And it's a way, way, way less expensive than laser technology. So that makes it more user-friendly. And it's got a wide variety of wavelengths that can be now put through with your light globes that actually give off that light. It's not a filter that it's got like a red filter that it goes through. The actual source of the energy comes from your LEDs that are giving it off. Okay. The only con, which is not technically a con, but it is a little bit for patients, is that you have to have a short exposure time. The amount of energy that can be dispersed in a short amount of time is very, very vital to the therapy. And I'm going to go into that a lot, and I'm going to repeat that a lot tonight. Less is more. If you want to have bad results, overstimulate people, and we get a shutdown response. It's much like not even doing anything at all. So short times are where the best results come. And every single research study where people have got results, and it's been tried to be reproduced by somebody else who said, oh, it was nonsense, didn't work. It was either that they had a crappy quality light, so it wasn't as strong in terms of its intensity, or they overstimulated. And the thing is, people say, well, what's the difference between a strong light versus a weak light? My answer to that is it's almost like trying to grill a steak in the sun. If you left it there long enough, it might absorb enough heat, but it's just going to dry out and get tough. When you want to grill a steak, you want a very hot light, a hot energy, and you want to stick that on the grill. You want to grill it quickly and then get it off. If you leave it too long, it's going to burn. And that's the same thing that we're dealing with here. If we look at something like lasers benefits are the concentration. So what it's got is it's got this high intensity concentration. So you've got great photonic penetration and very minimal dispersion. So you don't get much bounce back. The cons I mentioned earlier, it's a very small area. So you've got a very high intensity, and there's also a limitation of wavelengths. And to get a decent quality laser, you're going to pay a lot of money for it. So again, you also have very short exposures, because otherwise they burn or they overstimulate. And in those cases, we have got some of these lasers in our clinic. We've got a 5 to 7, it goes up to 7 watts. So basically it's 7,000 milliwatts. And you have to have special training, because you can't burn people if you don't know what you're doing. So there are benefits to that, but that's not what we're going to discuss. Those benefits, we want the healing response. So an unfocused LED, which is a lot of what you can buy on the market, and people say, oh, I bought this light on Takealot or Amazon, or got it online, and most of them are unfocused LEDs. So you get a lot of bounce. So everything looks very red, and you don't get much depth penetration, and it's a very diffuse beam, so you don't get a concentrated area where the light hits being treated. So as a result, it might look like it's cool, and this is literally like trying to cook your steak in the sun. You've got the red light, and it looks very cool, and it is red, and it might even have a correct wavelength, but you're not going to get the benefits. And that's why I say I've been very happy to work with MedWave because of the fact that you get results. All of us know that, especially those in the natural medicine industry, that you can get herbal products and things, but not all herbs are created equally. And as a result, you can give somebody a product that's got the right name, but the quality of that herbal ingredients or the concentrations are weak, and you just don't get the results. As a result, we don't have these kind of things working for us. So this is one of the biggest problems that I see with just people buying red lights or using red lights and saying, oh, it was junk, it didn't work. You need something very powerful. So what does red light do ostensibly? It's basically, it's going to dramatically improve cellular energy. I'm going to go into the science behind this now, but I'm just going to give you some overviews. It also has a very powerful ability to increase fat metabolism. And therefore, you're going to metabolize fat really quickly and you're going to get inch loss. There's a lot of misnomers and a little bit of misunderstanding that it melts fat and does that. Honestly, if you're going to melt fat, you're going to need it to be at least at a good couple of 100 degrees centigrade, and you're going to start burning people. So it doesn't melt fat, it metabolizes it, and that's why we get the inch loss. It also very importantly creates a lot of lymphatic drainage. So if you're doing any kind of disease process treatment, if you're not removing the toxins out of the area, cleaning up the matrix, improving the fluid balance with being able to replace it with the correct nutrients coming in, you're not going to get proper healing response. And then it also helps to regulate your immune inflammatory regulation. And I'll talk more to that in a second. It dramatically improves detoxification at a cellular level, but in a very, very elegant way. It doesn't cause a forced detoxification where you flush toxins out of storage. It helps to enhance every single one of our phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 detox chemicals. So all these glutathione drips and all these things that people are doing now with the genetic studies and things that people are looking at saying, oh, I don't have this and don't have that. Narrow light helps dramatically improve those things. So it can help with cellular healing. And also one of the major problems we see, particularly in the US, with fat gain is how much toxicity is in the food. And the body, when it can't lose weight, uses fat to store toxins because most of them are fat soluble. So what you do is that those are people who stall in their weight loss. They can't lose weight past a point because they go, oh my gosh, I'm so stuck because my body is full of toxins, and the fat won't give up the fat, or the cells won't give up the fat because it has to get rid of the toxins first. So it's a little bit like having your olives in some olive oil, and you want the oil, and you go, but if I do that, then my olives are going to dry out and they're going to go off. So you have to basically get those things out before you get hold of the substrate that they're living in. One of the really cool things is it increases collagen production, and therefore, wherever you shine it, it's going to help to create a smooth and vibrant skin. So that's a real bonus for any patients coming in. It's like these are secondary benefits to what's going to happen while they're having their weight loss. The other very important part for anything that you want to do weight loss related, or in fact any functional relationship, is the fact that you want to improve muscle building. And it does that because it increases actin and myosin actively, and it also improves the metabolism of how the body burns sugar as fuel and not muscle as fuel. So you'll see from the cystic spiral, which I'm going to talk about now, when our body's in our starvation mode, ostensibly we live off our own proteins, and our own protein being collagen, actin, myosin out of the muscles, and we start breaking down that as our fuel, and we start getting problems where now the system is used to cannibalizing yourself, and you'll start to see things with herniations. We start to see aneurysms starting to form in the blood vessels, varicose veins. So that's just the then you're going to see joint degeneration, and then you also see muscle wasting. So if you've ever seen that guy who's got a big belly and he's got no butt and no thighs, it's because he's literally eating his muscles to keep his belly stored, and I'm going to talk about that now. So we want more muscles because also the more muscle you've got, the faster you can actually burn the fat out of the system because you've got good muscles. And here's probably one of my most exciting parts, is it's very, very powerfully anti-inflammatory. And it works in a very, very awesome way in terms of how it is anti-inflammatory, which is so important, and particularly belly fat inflammation. So that being said, we also have tissue regeneration. So putting red light therapy onto long bones has been shown to increase stem cell production. so much so that it can help with tissue regeneration and repair, and also obviously improve rapid healing of tissue. Circulation is improved. I'll explain to that the mechanism of how it's done. It's not just a bit of heat in the area. It works with improving nitric oxide, and it also lowers all your inflammatory vascular issues associated with heart disease. So it gets rid of your interleukin 6, tumor necrosis factor alpha. It also gets rid of your CRP, and it lowers your LDLs. So it's very important for lowering plaques, and it also helps with calcium metabolism as a result, being the most critical part when we start to get calcification into our plaques that can then create issues with heart attacks. So I'm not saying that it's necessarily to be used in the middle of a myocardial infarction, but definitely in rehabilitating those patients and improving heart function, it's been extremely beneficial. And then finally, definitely worth the price of admission. This is what we've got literally a whole team of. In America, we've got divisions in terms of which universities fit into divisions. So the university where I live in Maine is a Division 1, which means that the highest level competitive. So these are the guys that then get drafted to professional sports teams in the NBA or in the NFL or in the hockey leagues and stuff. So we've got these guys coming in, and most of it is for this, just helping their mental, emotional, and because it increases dopamine. So you'll find that when people have lay on it, they'll describe it's like lying on the beach without the sunburn. So it's pretty cool. You get an increase in dopamine, and it also reduces acetylcholine and norepinephrine. So you're getting the stress response coming down, and also very important for gut function and muscle function by controlling and regulating acetylcholine. So let's get into weight loss. So in order to get into how narrow light fixes weight loss, I first want to talk about how I define the three basic causes of weight gain. So the first one in blue is the old school style of, it's not that it's obsolete, but it's just where we used to be able to control calories and therefore you can control weight. But that's not really possible anymore because of toxin storage and obesogens. So the old model was calories in versus calories out. If you eat less and you burn more, you lose weight. But it doesn't work like that anymore because of these nasty little chemicals called obesogens. So obesogens, unfortunately, are like the term carcinogen, which is we know is cancer forming. An obesogen is anything that can tell your body to store fat as opposed to burn it, becomes an obesogenic. So we've got exogenous obesogens in our life, and those are often in food. There's a lot of glyphosates sprayed on crops because it's a nice weed killer. It's not as big in South Africa, but America does about every single wheat or cash crop, your wheat, your soy, your corn, they're just doused with glyphosate and atrazine. Both of them are massive obesogens, mainly because they push up cortisol and insulin. So cortisol and insulin being your biggest natural endogenous obesogen. If anything is going to jack up your insulin levels and keep them up permanently, you're going to gain weight no matter what, because your body says, listen, we're going to store all our sugar in the central deposits in the, if our brain, heart, and our lungs are not using that sugar, we're going to then just store it via the liver into the belly fat. So glucose directly turns into triglycerides because of the high amounts of insulin. So foods have got them, pesticides have got it, preservatives are obesogenic, and then environments, any flame retardants in your mattress or in your jackets or in your furniture and your laminated wooden floors and things like that, they will outgas obesogens. So it's no wonder that the world's got a bit of a obesity epidemic at the moment. Toxin storage, I mentioned a little bit earlier. When your body's inflamed, it can't deal with toxins appropriately, and the metabolic waste from day-to-day cellular function is interrupted. And I'll talk when I show you how well narrow light improves those detox chemicals. You can see why when they're not working, your body basically will convert any of your cellular toxins into use them as being fat storage, or they use the fat as storage facilities to stop them being active. So the fat ostensibly basically takes like an electrical wire that's shorting out and just tapes it up and says, okay, it can't touch anything else. You put this little chemical in a fat cell, and it's no longer metabolically active until we can hopefully regain our ability to detox again, and then our body will pull it out. So that's very important. So what we do is there's the MedWave and the vibration therapy together with the systemic diet are capable of breaking all three of these things. And that's what I'm going to talk about now. So what is the cystic spiral? Cystic spiral is work that I've been doing for the last 20 years, and I've created this acronym, and it stands for cortisol, insulin, sugar, fat, inflammation, back to cortisol. So one of the things we have to understand is cortisol is not just an anti-inflammatory. We know it as cortisone, is the chemical mimic of our own cortisol. So we know that's great anti-inflammatory properties, but it's also got immune suppressant properties. So if you've got autoimmune diseases and stuff, not so much anymore because there's more tailored medicines, but cortisone was the big go-to for anything autoimmune and still is like a front line. But it's also a starvation chemical. And the reason that it's a starvation chemical is it does two things that enhance starvation. One is it is the direct stimulator of insulin. So cortisol is the major cause of insulin resistance. Nothing else causes insulin resistance more than cortisol, because what it does is it shuts down your GLUT4 receptors that are sensitive to insulin and says, nope, we're not opening those. And insulin therefore has to keep all the sugar for the central system, for your brain, heart, and muscles. Because if you are starving, in reality, you don't want your muscles using sugar when they've got protein they can burn themselves. So what happens, unfortunately, in this situation, we don't burn fat either, because insulin converts sugar via glycolysis through acetyl-CoA into lipogenesis and makes triglycerides. So when you make triglycerides, you literally start putting those into the liver, and you end up with fatty liver syndrome. And then what happens is that fat also then gets pushed to the viscera, and we ended up with high amounts of visceral fat. So the problem with visceral fat is that visceral fat is metabolically active. Reason being is that visceral fat cells start to die because they grow too quickly. And when I talk about visceral fat, I'm not just talking about belly fat as well. All the fat around the heart that you start seeing in people that are obese, that's a visceral fat that's also toxic. And they make cytokines. And these cytokines are pro-inflammatory chemicals that cause insulin resistance, heart disease, cellular damage. So this is like CRP, your interleukins 1, 6, 27, 17, TNF alpha, fibrinogen, so we get clotting issues. All of those are basically cytokines that get produced by M1 macrophages, which infiltrate your fat. And when they infiltrate your fat, they're doing it because they're trying to clean up the problem where we have ostensibly a lot of die-off of the cells that are too big, and the macrophages come to clean them up. Unfortunately, they produce cytokines, and the way we get rid of those cytokines in the body is literally by using cortisol. So the mechanism is this, that when you have a cytokine, cyto means cell, kine means to call. So it's the body's radio messages that when an immune cell has basically come across something that shouldn't be there, it then releases cytokines to call other cells and other inflammatory processes into action in order to combat whatever virus, fungus, bacteria, foreign cancer, whatever it is, depending on the cell. But cytokines are used for that reason. Problem is that when these things don't switch off, we have a glut of cytokines, which is what we see as our modern day scourge, is this chronic pro-inflammatory process. And the thing that happens is the transcription factor, which is the chemical that is released from the cell wall to travel to the nucleus to give the body the message to run off a whole bunch of more cytokines, literally is nuclear factor kappa B. So NF kappa B is the transcription factor in macrophages to stimulate the production of more macrophages. However, the body has got another transcription factor that is only released by cortisol, and that's called an annexin. And the annexins bind to NF-kappa B, effectively exercising cortisol's anti-inflammatory role. So it's not like an anti-inflammatory where it knocks out cytokines. It literally stops the cells that produce cytokines from producing them. Problem is that when you have too much inflammation from an extraneous source, you end up now making more and more inflammation, which now causes the body to need more cortisol, which tells the body to think it's starving more and more, which extensively takes all your carbohydrates and stores them as fat, and we just keep tightening the spiral. Hence the name, the cyclic spiral. So you will never, ever effectively get anyone to lose weight long term unless you break the spiral. You can try keto, you can try starvation, you can try Ozempic, you can try all of these things. None of them are going to actually give you any lasting results unless you break the spiral. And it's quite difficult to break because of the fact that cortisol's got many roles, and we have to actually help deal with inflammation if we want cortisol to come down. And we've got to deal with the cortisol to get the insulin down, and we can't unpack the fat to sugar as long as insulin's present. Because what happens when you have high cortisol, insulin is the opposition chemical to glucagon, and glucagon's role is to unpack fat back into energy, either in the form of ketosis or basically gluconeogenesis, which is what we would prefer, where you turn the fat back into sugar, and that sugar now becomes an incredible source without any waste. So why do we want that? So let's go down and talk about why it's important to use sugar as fuel and not fat as fuel, and certainly not protein as fuel. Because in a starvation response, what our body does is it says, okay, we're dying here, we're starving. And what we've got to do is we've got to store all sugar as fat, which means that it's a little bit like a house. This works better in America because of the fact that houses are freezing cold there and everyone runs on some form of heat source. So a lot of people have propane heaters or electric heaters, and they burn clean. So what happens is propane is what we would call LP gas or gas cylinders here. And what happens is that when you're running on that kind of gas, what it's going to do is it's going to give off a clean energy. You can have an open flame of that gas in your house as long as it's controlled. You can't pump the stuff through the window and then light the match. Well, you can, but you only do it once. So now we have to have it controlled, just like glucose. We're going to have a glut of glucose in the bloodstream because it's very destructive, and it starts to create glycation with your endothelial cells, so it starts destroying them. So we have to now get it out of the bloodstream into the cells. And generally what we do is we use two types of receptors, GLUT1 and GLUT4 receptors. But when we have insulin resistance, both of them are blocked. TNF-alpha can block insulin. TNF-alpha is one of the cytokines that are produced by the belly fat. The other problem is that, as I mentioned, we now start to use protein to cannibalize the system. So a lot of the American houses are made of wood, and what happens now is if you're going to freeze to death in your house at night and you can't use the propane, you know what? Just start ripping up the furniture and burning that in the lounge. But the problem with it is it makes a really toxic substance, and the body says, okay, I can't deal with too much of that, and that's uric acid. So we start putting a lot of pressure on the kidneys. So we start to see a lot of the problem here is cardiovascular disease. We start having all of the neurological problems. We start having hormonal problems. Why the hormonal problems? Well, because cortisol is made from progesterone, and progesterone is responsible for making testosterone and estrogen. So when we don't have enough testosterone and estrogen, it's generally because cortisol has stolen all the progesterone. The other very big problem that we see that's massive at the moment is cortisol enhances insulin, as I've mentioned, but cortisol and insulin increase an enzyme called 5-alpha reductase, and that increases testosterone production into DHT, which is responsible for prostate cancer and polycystic ovarian syndrome. So this is the mechanism by which women start getting hirsutism, they start getting masculinization from DHT, and men start having prostate problems because of the high DHT, or because of the fact that the body is now stealing resources away from your normal reproduction and jacking up cortisol levels. So cortisol is basically a contraceptive, a starvation chemical, a stress chemical, an anti-inflammatory, and an immune suppressant. So when it arrives, it doesn't do these jobs individually, it does them all at once. So if you need it for inflammation, it's going to tell you you're starving and you're suppressing your immune system and you're infertile. So I had to learn to fix that by fixing all of these other things. Irritable bowel comes into it. So these are major problems. By fixing the cyclic spiral, we're going to have huge benefits in being able to heal people from many, many, many things and get them to lose weight. So here's what red light does in a nutshell. At a cellular level, it's going to improve circulation. It's going to push fatty acids out of the cells. It improves lymphatic drainage. It opens up your insulin. So improves the GLUT1 and GLUT4 receptors, so you can get sugar brought into the cells. It displaces nitric oxide out of the Krebs cycle. So the COX here is not cyclooxygenase, it is cytochrome C oxidase. And what that does is cytochrome C binds oxygen to make the Krebs cycle work. So we all know no oxygen, no ATP, we die. So what happens is to limit cellular metabolism, the body will put nitric oxide into the Krebs cycle to rate limit it. And as a result, we slow down energy production, mainly because the body's burning protein as fuel. So I'm sorry for anybody who's a big carnivore fan or a big keto fan, it's extremely dangerous long-term because of this reason. You start to just cannibalize yourself and you start to see, yes, you'll lose a bit of weight to start. The only good thing about a carnivore diet is probably the first 2 to 3, maybe not that long, maybe about first 6 weeks to 2 months when you're just not eating sugar, and that gets the body to start metabolizing other things. But yeah, long term, we don't want to just be cannibalizing protein. We're not made for that. We're made for sugar because the byproduct of sugar metabolism is carbon dioxide and water. Ketones are toxic. They have to be removed out the system, and so is uric acid. So glucose metabolism results in us being able to detox by literally breathing it out. And that's your biggest weight loss organ. Literally carbon breathed out in the form of carbon dioxide is the fastest way to lose weight, and then the water is just peed out the system after it's been used. So the other thing that we're going to talk about here is how red light affects your NF-kappa B and your annexins, and how it improves protein function. So what do we want when we want weight loss? When you put red light onto somebody, what it does is it increases the metabolic demand for fatty acids, and it causes the system to release those fatty acids mainly out of your visceral fat. And what that does is it then gets it intracellularly. The lymphatics will take it away, and the lymphatics now take it by the bloodstream into the liver. The liver converts it back to glucose. The glucose now basically can turn into ATP in the cell and create cellular energy in the most clean, efficient way. And this is what we want. Both the narrow light as well as the narrow light as well as the vibration therapy do the same thing. So you say, okay, well, we've got all the sugar that's been now metabolized. Now, normally, it's not a good thing if your insulin is resistant because you just up your blood sugar level and then pack it back into the fat again. But in this case, what you're doing is that when you're doing a whole system, a whole part of the body that is now being, these panels are 3 feet long. So you're going to get the whole torso and upper legs. And what that will do is it's going to give you an incredible ability to have metabolism working, and that's going to give your system a really, really good overall improvement in cellular energy. As I mentioned before, we displace your nitric oxide, put oxygen in place, we dramatically increase ATP. So your cytochrome C oxidase is the enzyme, it's the fourth enzyme in the Krebs cycle process, and as a result, with red light, it's going to give you the most ATP. This is where its magic happens. And if the mitochondria are working, the mitochondria do many, many wonderful things. Sorry, we just had a power outage, so I'm just getting some lights if I disappeared. All right, so let's look at that going forward. So what happens is that when your mitochondria are working correctly, what we also get is we actually get the production of reactive oxygen species, and the body produces another transcription factor called NRF2. And what that does is both of those two cause the genetics to produce your 6 most powerful phase 1 and phase 2 detox chemicals: glutathione, sulfur transferase, UDP, glucuronidase, methyltransferase. As you get it, all of them are now produced. So your body can now actively detox, not by flushing it into the system and having to be put into the fat cells. It can pull it out the fat cells so they can now lose weight. And that's what makes this process so amazing, is that one thing is doing all of this simultaneously. It's getting your ATP production, it's getting your cellular function to work optimally, right from energy to cleansing. And that's what we need in order to stay healthy. So detoxification is one of the major processes necessary in order to effectively lose weight and reduce the need for inflammation. So it also allows the phase 2 water-soluble detoxes to be enhanced, and therefore we can now turn those toxins into water-soluble instead of fat-soluble, so they can be transported out of the lymphatics. Why do you get an increase in circulation? Well, nitric oxide. You've displaced nitric oxide out of the cells, and it now goes into the bloodstream. It causes a localized vasodilation, and we now bring new nutrients to the area. It increases oxygenation to the tissues, and it lowers these little mechanisms involved in cardiovascular disease. CRP, interleukin-6, it lowers your triglycerides, especially LDLs. It increases adiponectin. Adiponectin is a vital. Kind of think of adiponectin as like endothelial tile adhesive. So endothelium is like this beautiful tiled floor that allows for these high-speed cells to be screaming past at lightning speed without snagging. When you've got the endothelial cells start lifting due to inflammation, what happens is it's usually because of a low adiponectin, and that's also increased by visceral fat, and mature fat cells that are dying don't make adiponectin anymore. And as a result, what we get is we start to get the beginnings of cardiovascular disease. So we also get neovascularization as a result of red light. We've seen a lot of people. I've just had a guy that we've been doing some red light. He had a varicose ulcer. His legs were purple. His ulcer was as big as my hand, about as deep as my fingers. And literally in 1 month, he lost 27 pounds. And we managed to actually get his leg to go from as big as my hand to the size of probably a £2 coin, to be able to where it was like sealed over. His color returned literally in 12 weeks. It was more than he had done in 2 years using antibiotics and all sorts of other things. So he was going to lose his leg, and this saved that literally by removing the toxins out of his diet that were causing this weight gain and all of the inflammation, and allowing the neovascularization with the red light. So pretty incredible stuff. So here to me is one of the biggest, most magical aspects. So I mentioned that macrophages produce cytokines en masse, and the M1s are your pro-inflammatory ones. And in my book that I wrote, the Humania Wasteland book that David was talking about, it's an allegorical story about the body, and the macrophages will be these big war machines called Furies, and they burn everything in their path. And so what happens now is why red light is so amazing is that it can directly inhibit nuclear factor kappa B in macrophages. Ironically, it enhances it in stem cells. So NF kappa B in stem cells is what causes them to replicate. So this one energy and one bit of photonic response can knock out inflammation and enhance cellular repair. And what this does for me is it's what makes it so powerful with regard to the cystic spiral, because it's all good and well having cortisol being able to control inflammation. You also eventually over time can develop cortisol resistance, because the same cytokines can inhibit the glucocorticoid receptor sites on the cell where cortisol's got to bind, and as a result, we don't get annexins being released. But in this case, we don't even need cortisol. So with one fell swoop, you're literally breaking the cystic spiral in 2 places. What you're doing is it acts very much like cortisol. So I'm just going to jump to something else quickly. Give me a second, and we'll come back to those. So literally, what you're doing is narrow light behaves very much like cortisol, inhibits belly fat inflammation. By doing that, we've now lost the inflammatory source, because you're not overproducing cytokines. And remember, when you're doing this panel, you're hitting the whole body at once. So you do the front for a while and you do the back for a while. So you're going through all these fat cells in the belly, all your intestinal cells, this whole area, which is this whole milieu of basically inflammatory soup that your gut is flowing in. So we knock out 2 parts of the cystic spiral, and that makes it very exciting for me. So also by increasing fat metabolism, what we're getting is we're now making sure that the body is burning those fatty acids, turning them back into energy. So the really, really cool part about that is also you can detox those fat cells faster, and by detoxing the fat cells faster, you're removing them out of the system. You can now burn that fat to turn into fatty acids. And then the final thing I want to just mention before we get into some of the technique of how we get the weight loss done is that the endoplasmic reticulum is basically your 3D printer for proteins. So your mRNA basically sends a little file to the printer and says, hey, can you run off this protein? And what the body does is it lines up a whole bunch of amino acids, and those amino acids are attracted to some of their buddies, and they fold up that protein. And as a result, we can make increased collagen, increased muscle, and even increased elastin. So it's really, really good for people. We found that if you fast and do red light, you don't have as much of the skin. When I'm talking about people that we're treating, one of our ladies at the moment is currently on 135 pounds. So what's that? That's probably around about 60, 70 kilograms since the beginning of the year that she's lost. And it's incredible because she's like so shocked that she doesn't have so much of this hanging skin. She's been very, very strict on the diet, and you're going to have to be if you want proper results, but we'll get into that now. So in summary, let's have a look at what your midwave red light does. So the one panel is a 635 nanometer, and what you're doing is it's coming out at 200 milliwatts per light. That's at a 30-degree angle, and that's very important because every single thing about the effectiveness of red light relies on power and what we call fluence. How much red light gets to penetrate into the tissues. If it's scattered and bouncing all over the place, you're not going to get enough penetration. If it's too focused, like we get with the laser, you're going to treat spots at any one stage, unless you've got like a shower type laser. But even there, it's not dispersing like this. And this is what makes this technology really awesome. So it's going to increase oxygen, reactive oxygen species, ATP, tissue regen. It increases your fibroblasts, massive in F-kappa B regulation, and you're going to get detoxification, gluconeogenesis, and an increase in lipolysis. So starting with lipolysis, we pull that out. We then turn that to the gluconeogenesis. That sugar can now be put back into the cells because we've improved the insulin response. We now get a release of the reactive oxygen species and the NRF2 from the mitochondria. And the cell says, thank you very much. We can make all our detox chemicals. And then to wrap it all up, we inhibit NF-kappa B and switch off the macrophages and allow for protein regeneration. And that's what makes this so elegant, is the fact that anything from a nerve to a blood vessel, to a bone, to a muscle, to your organs, all improve in exactly the same way. Every single cell in your body needs optimum mitochondrial function. So it's become the new buzzword in treatment now. Up your mitochondria, fix your mitochondria, you've got mitochondrial health. You've got all these supplements trying to take it. Honestly, you shine a beautiful red light on people, and it does a lot of that for you. So what we're going to do is we're going to break this fixed spiral by making sure that we get rid of the cortisol. I've told you that it improves insulin function, so we get that work in. So the insulin now goes away because we get rid of insulin resistance. The fat turns back to sugar, and voila, we turn the sugar back into ATP, and we now start to blow off the carbon dioxide and pee out the water, and we start to lose weight in that way. So quick little...
Collins, sorry, quick question. So, thanks. That was a lot. I think that was amazing, and I really thank you for going through that in such detail like that. We had somebody that has asked a question, just in terms of like the clinical efficiency of this. Like, can you just tell us a little bit about the efficacy of this therapy for people that have come into your own practice and have been, overweight? Maybe you've got 3-4 examples you can kind of give us in terms of, underlying maybe comorbidities. People have come in with really unwell. Maybe you can just give us a couple of those examples and sort of two or three that you think have really stood out to you in terms of weight loss, that this has hit those targets you've just described.
Sure. Can I just quickly show you, just for those who don't use it, quickly 3 more slides about how it works. Literally what we're doing here is we're getting people to stand on the vibration therapy and exercise their muscles at such a rapid rate, because the vibration causes your body to exercise so fast that you cannot burn protein. You have to burn glucose. So that's very important. So no normal exercises, Pilates and things are great for other things, but when it comes to actual fat loss, they don't do that. Your body will just burn protein. Being under the narrow light basically for 5 to 8 minutes on one side, then turn them over on the other side. And then what we do is we put them back under. And literally, the power exchange that happens when you put someone on vibration is literally about your mass times acceleration over displacement. So, and then you divide that by time. So when you've got someone's weight by the vibration of 30 hertz frequencies, it's equivalent to squatting your car once. That's how much energy outputs you will do per minute. So that's how much energy you're going to burn for the people. So I'm going to end this now, stop sharing my screen, and I will get back onto here, and then I can start answering questions. Okay, sorry about the weird lights. We don't have any power here. So one of the things that we've got is, I live in the obesity capital of the world, mainly because of the really poor quality food and the unfair food practices that have been legally allowed, where they allow poisons in the food. It's quite disgusting. It's starting to change now, but people are really, really sick and really inflamed. So 90% of what you're going to see is that people come in thinking they want weight loss, but what keeps them coming back are the physiological improvements. So based on what I've seen there, what we do is the first thing we start to see is there's a major change in mood. One of the biggest stimulators for dopamine exogenously is glucose. So if you're feeling inflamed and crappy, your dopamine levels are down, your acetylcholine is going ballistic in your guts, telling your brain that the basement's in fire, that you must run for your life, so you feel anxious. And the only thing that offsets that is sugar, plus the fact that your sugar's all been packed away, so you crave sugar. So immediately by putting people on the red light, you up their dopamine levels, that sugar craving drops. That's one thing. The other thing that we see dramatically is inflammation changes. So most of the stuff that I'm dealing with cardiovascular health, we know that cardiovascular health is ostensibly an inflammatory process of your blood vessels, where cholesterol tries to protect against that inflammatory process. And no matter how many statins you take and how much cholesterol you try to lower the system, it's not going to help long term, because of the fact if you don't deal with inflammation, you're going to continue to damage the tissues. So inflammatory changes, gut changes are the most profound core areas. So what you're doing is you've got this light being shot onto the belly, and when it's been shot onto the belly, you get incredible changes in gut health. A few areas. Number one, we start to remove the inflammation. Very important. Number two, you start increasing stomach acid. So a lot of people go, oh, I've got heartburn. No, I've got too much stomach acid. In fact, it's now been shown that high stomach acid increases the tone in your lower esophageal sphincter, which prevents reflux. So by improving stomach acid, I do that in every single one of my patients. By getting stomach acid working, it switches on 36 other hormones in the digestive process. But red light can do the same thing. So immediately you improve in heartburn, you improve in inflammatory bowel conditions. So it ups that. And now the other big controversial one is GLP-1. GLP-1 is secreted after the body drops stomach acid into the duodenum. It causes the release of a chemical called cholecystokinin, CCK. Cholecyst is the name for gallbladder. Kinin means to move, so it's basically translated to gallbladder squeeze. So cholecystokinin squeezes your gallbladder, gets bile release, so we can start detoxing for one, and we can get bile. It also causes pancreatic release together with another hormone called secretin. Secretin and cholecystokinin have to be triggered by stomach acid, and healthy digestion then starts by stimulating GLP-1, which is up for 15 minutes once in the jejunum. So what happens now is that when you actually have red light, it can increase the cells in the jejunum in terms of their metabolic function, which allows them to make proper GLP-1, which is often suppressed in inflamed people because your cortisol tells you you're starving, which switches off your stomach acid, which stops the digestion, which causes the inflammation. So you can start to see now, by breaking the cycle, you start to have all of these kind of things. And this is where things start to fall apart. So my biggest approach to this is that nothing happens in isolation. You can't treat one thing at a time. You can't just lower the cortisol levels, because you're going to have them come up again because of the inflammation. So we've got to break the inflammation, the sugar, the insulin, the fat, all at the same time. So what I see with the outcomes, mostly with the patients, dramatic improvement in gut function. So now they start having regular bowel movements, they stop getting as bloated, they start feeling so much better. And as a result, without all that inflammation and all of those things, they stop their sugar cravings. So the Sysfican diet basically involves what I call an acronym of SWACO. It's sugar, wheat, alcohol, coffee, and seed oils. I take people off those very strictly. And we do our protocols basically over 4 months. So we do 2 months of red light twice a week and whole body vibration. So 5 minutes on the vibration machine, you cause the body to go cook, and it's like going crazy. And then what happens is that you've caused what I call a glucose suck. So what is a glucose suck? It means that when you metabolize your muscles so fast by exercising them in that extreme speed, they haven't got time to break down protein, so they cause the body to use all the glycogen in the muscles. The glycogen gets depleted, which then calls for the glucose in the bloodstream that's around. Remember, the muscles have a very high amount of GLUT1 receptors, so they can ostensibly use glucose without the presence of insulin because it's a built-in emergency response to be able to run for your life if you're chased by a predator. So what happens now is that you start to create a glucose deficiency in the body, which then forces the system to say the only reason we were starving and storing belly fat was to stay alive, but we're no good if we stay alive and we get eaten by predators. So that's the one time where you mimic this response and the body will pull all the sugar out of the liver and convert triglycerides and glycogen back into glucose, and your cells will use it. So by doing that, you're creating this massive demand by exercising so many muscles at once so quickly. That's why the vibration therapy is incredible for this. Then what we do is after 5 minutes, they stop that, they're pretty exhausted, they go and lie on the red light, and now you release all those glucose into the system. So it's so perfect. Yeah, so Bronwyn says that will the weight loss happen the same rate if the person has had their gallbladder removed? No. You have to support it. You have to give them some kind of bile support. Otherwise, what happens is their detox system slows down. So bile is not just, you've always got to think about it, it's not just being releasing bile to basically metabolize fats. It's the way in which the liver dumps a lot of the toxins into effectively this big river that's now flowing out of the body. If we've got inflammatory gut problems or leaky guts or anything like that, we start reabsorbing those toxins. But if the bile, if you don't have a gallbladder, you're not getting cholecystokinin like releasing at once. You're having it dripping all the time. But when people eat, they need to have some form of bile salts. Or an ox liver, an ox bile replacement. There are supplements available on the market that help with that. And dandelion is a really good one to basically get the body to flush and get it out of the system. So these are really, really cool things that help. Once you get this inflammation out of the system, then what you start to see is all the other things start to heal. The skin gets better, they start feeling better, they're motivated because for the first time they're losing weight without feeling hungry. The reason you don't feel hungry is because you can actually have access to your stores, and that's cool. So what we do with most people after 4 months depends on how much weight they've got to lose. Okay, so if you're a massive 3, 4, 500, we've got, people who've watched TLC where you watch at 600-pound life. We see those people, and it's very unfortunate that their systems are in that stage. But what we do with those is that you're not going to lose that weight in under a year. You're going to take at least 2 years to lose that much weight. So those people have to be there. But if you've gained your goal weight, the thing with the Sysfix Bile is staying away from wheat, sugars, coffee, and alcohol as a habit means that you have it as a treat. Bread, unfortunately, has got so many chemicals in it that are not food. You buy any loaf of bread in the supermarket, it's got around about 27 kilograms, maybe. It's got 27 chemicals in it that are now, it shouldn't be there just to make it look fluffy and be all nice and light and all those kind of things. So, yeah, when people start making more artisan breads and stuff that are made from unbleached flour, those kind of things, it starts to work. So, all right, I'm going to start moving now onto some of the questions. I'm seeing here one from Deepa about NAD. So one of the processes that your body is doing with NAD is part of the Krebs cycle process where it becomes NADP, and it's now going to start helping with the production of one Krebs cycle, and also what you can do is it's going to enhance your detox. So obviously by taking any supplement that's going to enhance that, the red light makes sure that the mechanism works. And this is one of the big problems we see, is that we can supplement with things, but they don't do their thing because of the fact that the control mechanism of the body protecting itself from the starvation, although it's a fake starvation, because you're basically 100 kilograms of weight, but your body still thinks you're starving, is that we've got to now enhance the mechanisms that do that. And that's why I love the red light, because it does it simultaneously on so many spaces that it saves you having to give around about 30 or 40 supplements. I'm just going to go, David. I was trying to have a view to look at questions, or do you want to just ask me
Colin,
questions?
I can shoot the questions. Thank you for sharing
Fine.
all that. So awesome to get into those details biochemically. Before we get to the questions, that you mentioned, the last panel that you had is the neuro panel, and you had some cool
Oh, yeah.
cases that you said you want to share. So we're really curious, quickly, if you can share some of those
Okay, right.
cases, and then there's two
Okay, so I've got a
questions
couple
maybe
of
that we
really
can
cool.
just answer as well.
Sure. Let me tell you about those quickly. So one of the things that I had just recently is um, I've got a lot of people. I mean, anxiety and depression is a big thing in society at the moment. So what I started doing is looking at all the sort of insomnia, anxiety people, and it's been incredible at reducing that. But one little story I need to tell, a bit sad story, is a sweet little girl. She was born to a drug addict mother and father, and her two little sisters were neglected. She was 3 when she was adopted into the family that brought her to see me. She's 12 now, but major learning problems. She can't sit still. She basically doesn't sleep at night. She's got eating disorders where she'll eat toilet paper or anything because she was starved, so she was young. So even 6 years, I'm 9 years on at living with this family, it hasn't really changed a lot of that. And she's about 4 or so years behind in um, her academic age versus her chronological age. So a very sweet little girl, but very agitated, never stops moving. So I asked her mom if I could put her under the neuro panel. That's with the 8 to 10, and she doesn't like getting hot, so she was stressed about it. So I kept it probably around about 30, 40 centimeters away from her head, and I put her lying underneath that. I'm fully clothed at this stage. I like to, if people can't get undressed, they must be white. Don't put people with any black under the lights because it absorbs the heat and they get very hot in their black clothes. But anyway, this little girl came back to my office after she had been on the panel, and she fell asleep for the first time, basically, since her mom has had her. She actually was passed out. She said even when she sleeps, she's always moving. She's not stopped. She was out. Eventually, I had to carry her to the car, and it was amazing because her mom filmed her when she started waking up, and it was a little bit like those kids that come out of like having anesthesia for their wisdom teeth. She was all dopey and like talking a little bit of nonsense and stuff. And but her mom noticed that she ate normally for 4 days. She slept completely restful for 4 days, and then it started wearing off. So we now have her come in twice a week. Every 4 days she comes in, and it's amazing because she's now sleeping. She's actually caught up with her age schoolwork. Now we're talking about literally 3 weeks, and she was doing this regularly. So that was just one of them. It's really exciting. So that neuro panel is pretty cool. And then I treat, unfortunately, Maine is really an epicenter for Lyme disease, which causes major neurological problems long term. So I have a lot of these very sensitive people who can't do anything um, without the neurological system going down, and they freak out. And the red light, the neuro panel, has been literally allowing these people to emotionally settle to the point where they can tolerate taking the medications. The inflammation has got better. Headaches have gone away. Their muscle tingling, there's a lot of tingling and neurological symptoms as a result of that. So that's with the neuro panel. The red light beds, we having, as I say, these sports stars are getting incredible results. Their recovery is amazing. And then, yeah, we've basically got anywhere between 5 to 10 people a day that come for the specific weight loss midwave program. And they consistently lose in the first 2 months. They lose in around about 3 to 4 pounds a week. And then what happens is their inches go down quite dramatically because they start reconstituting their muscles. And then most people lose between, I'd say, 30 to 40 pounds over the 4 months. And then what they do is then they continue eating well. Some of them come back for more maintenance, and it just gets better and better and better. So this is what we've seen, and it's very consistent. we can pretty much guarantee those results. So really cool. And then fertility. Fertility is a major thing that I was known for, and we have incredible results in actually regulating the hormones because of the fact that you take away the DHT, and with the DHT gone, suddenly what we're seeing is that all these people can have their estrogen and testosterone. One thing I just want to say with that, something else that's very, very important is the gut microbiome. The gut microbiome makes up 1/3 of your genetic material. And what this found is when we did the human genome study, we had only 2/3 of the chemicals in our body were accounted for by the genes we have. So your biome makes up all those chemicals. And one of them is a chemical called beta-glucuronidase, and that's in the gut, and that unconjugates estrogen. So estrogen dominance patients have too much beta-gluc, and they overproduce it by the bacteria, and they then put estrogen back into the system all the time. So endometriosis, estrogen dominance patterns. Polycystics have the opposite. They don't have enough beta-gluc, so they can't unconjugate it. So every time the liver gets rid of estrogen, it just gets flushed out the system. So the body's got to keep that balance right, and that's gut microbiome control. That amongst many other things. The PhD in medicine I'm doing at the moment in Durban here has got to do with the environmental toxins and all those things. The gut microbiome is huge in all of that. And then red light is incredible at improving gut microbiome. So it heals the gut and does a huge part there. So I think we haven't even explored half of the things that we're seeing from now. So that's pretty awesome. Cool.
Thanks, Colin. That's some incredible testimonials. There's just, I mean, we are running out of time here, but I just want to ask one question that was in the chat is on darker skin color. How the results on that, or do you do any adjustments on the protocol?
Absolutely. Yeah. So darker skin color is to remember photonic energy is absorbed by increased pigment. So if you've got patients with darker skin color, all I do is I actually move the panel away from them. Most of the time, my little rule of thumb, that's probably around about 10 centimeters, 10 to 12 centimeters. That's how far away from the highest part of the skin you want them. So when that panel comes down, you put it on their chest or on their belly if it's bigger, and that's how close the panel comes. I will double that distance with someone with darker skin. So what you're doing is you're giving the chance for the photonic energy to disperse more before more is absorbed. And that's the same with darker clothes. You've got to be careful. I did think I saw a little question pop up about, was it vitiligo? Unfortunately, it's not going to affect anyone who's got pigmentation. It deals with that. But what the biggest problem that we see with vitiligo is that those melanocytes have been destroyed. I haven't seen them come back in any of the patients that we've treated, and we have done a few. So no, I wish I could say it worked, but not dramatically. Someone else might have other results, but not us. Okay.
Colin, that has been amazing. Have you got any final words or anything that what would you say about this?
Okay. Final word is less is more. Less is more. Do not overstimulate your patients. We'll put them on the red light for 5 to 8 minutes. The temptation is so much that you want to do more. Trust me, I've tested it myself. We've got the full 360 bed that you lie in, and we get people in there for 10 minutes at a time. And unfortunately, I tried it. I went in there for 15 to 20 minutes at a time for a couple of days in a row. I was so sick. I had a major, major kind of inflammatory response because it actually inhibits a lot of your enzymes. So don't overstimulate. It's based on the Arndt-Schultz principle. Arndt-Schultz principle is a bell curve that looks like this. If you've got too little stimulation, you can't respond. If you have too much, you get resistance. That's the whole problem that we have, and all of those kind of things that settle it down. So yes, it's a huge, 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 huge problem with regards to red light therapies. Western thinking is, we've got to knock it out the park by giving more. And that's why I say it's a bit of a problem, because people say, wow, I paid for this whole treatment and I was only under there for 10 minutes. But yeah, that 10 minutes is worth gold. Don't overdo it and don't be tempted. They'll get the results anyway.
That's amazing.
That's my final takeaway.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate you. It's been really amazing to dive deeper into the science side of things. And if anybody does have questions after this, you're more than welcome to write to us at info@medwavegroup.com. And again, Colin, thank you so much
It's a pleasure.
it's just coming on and sharing. I know you're so busy with the research project in Durban over there, and yeah, it's taking some time out. And then you've got a storm going on over there. It's cut your electricity out. But yeah, thank you again for just making the effort and being out here with us. And yeah, appreciate you a lot. Well, thanks
It's a
everybody.
pleasure. Well, thank you, everyone. Okay. Have a great evening, everyone. And yeah,
Bye, everybody.
Thanks everybody. So if anybody has any questions for us, you're more than welcome to write to us. I know there's a couple of people that have asked, how much is our program? What is it? How do we do this? How do you get started? Well, we have, you can write to us at Andries at medwavegroup.com. Let me just quickly put his email address in the chat here, Andries at medwavegroup.com. Yep. And then that should do the trick. So just write there and say, I'm interested or whatever. And one of our team, and he'll pick it up. And obviously one of our team will pick it up. We'd love to have a chat with you further. All right. So if you are interested, we have two types of panels. Maybe let's just clarify on that what Colin was talking about there is we have a contour panel, which is usually for sort of superficial inflammation, subcutaneous fat reduction. And then you have the neuro panel, which is a lot more for the deeper penetrating therapies, especially brain, gut, and also again, deeper, like especially if you're treating wounds in South Africa, we are cleared with SAPRA. We're indicated for pain, weight loss, wounds, and neurological health. So if you are interested in using this technology in any one of those indications, you are more than welcome to do that and then reach out to us about protocols. We have a chief medical officer on staff. You're more than welcome to, get those protocols. And if there's any specific sort of conditions or comorbidities or underlying conditions you're concerned about, again, we have a team here to support you with all of that and to help guide when it comes to the types of patients you see on a daily basis. All right. Well, so thank you so much, everybody, for joining. Maybe one last thing I can mention that I definitely don't want to miss out on is we have two new documentaries coming out with some of the top cricketers. Who was just remind me of the names again, Contra?
Oh, yeah, we've got some world champ weightlifter, Astrid, in Cape Town, and then we've got David Miller and Keith Dudgeon. So some cool sports stars that's going to feature.
Yeah, so we've been actually doing a little bit of around the country. We've been driving around and getting our film crew out, and so keep a watch out over the next 2 to 3 weeks. We're going to be bringing out an incredible two documentaries actually that are going to showcase the use of this in sports science, longevity, into the weight loss and beauty side as well, and so on and so forth. So thank you again, everybody, for jumping on, and thanks for showing interest in Medwave. We're very excited to potentially work with you in the future, and have a wonderful, wonderful, blessed evening. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Good night.
Thanks, Colin.
Pleasure, David. Cheers, guys. Bye.
Bye.